XTRI. And I would like to start with Flora. So Flora, she said she is actually in Switzerland. Flora, could you please share with us what does XTRI means for you?
Good then. Yeah, I'll get started now. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm gonna give a talk about the female competitive edge in extreme triathlon. And that's a little bit of a provocative title. It sounds like I'm going to tell you all the secret, innate talents that female athletes have and how they can use those to beat the men in any race. Actually, that's not what I'm going to be doing today. This is not about boys versus girls. Because generally when we talk about endurance sport and we look at the boys versus girls story, it's very much a question of physical capabilities. And physical capabilities aren't really what I want to focus on today. What I want to talk about are other capacities, characteristics, and abilities that athletes might have, and how anyone can use those to improve their performance, particularly in extreme triathlon. And when we look at the physical questions surrounding athletes, particularly when we look at the gender separation, then we often hear things like men have more fast twitch fibers or more testosterone, so they can be faster over particular distances. But we're also starting to hear stories from the world of ultra endurance, and we've had a lot of those in the past couple of years, of women closing the gap to men and even opening the gap on the other side, so they're beating the men. And you've got long distance swimmers, long distance runners, long distance cyclists who over these multi-day competitions show that they seem to have an advantage in some aspects over men. And it's been debated that women have better fat burning abilities, they have a lower center of gravity, they require less sleep. So these are all physical characteristics that seem to differentiate men and women. But what's often neglected in that kind of discussion are the other characteristics that make someone a good athlete, which are also particularly interesting. And the characteristics that I want to talk about today are not ones that only women have or that are only interesting for women or that only women can develop. These are characteristics that I think any athlete can work on and develop, but they are traits that I see that women often use to great advantage to do a really great job in endurance sports. When I say I don't talk about the physical today, that's not to say that physical preparation and training is unimportant. It is essential. If you're going to take on a challenge like extreme triathlon or Norseman, you have to train, you have to be physically prepared. There's no question about that. You have to get your body to the level that you can withstand anywhere between 11 to 17 hours on your feet racing. And there's just no question about it. And you will know, or your coach will know, how best to get you to that point. But there are other characteristics, and they can be highly individual, but also extremely important, and in many cases as important as fitness in doing well in an extreme. And the reason that is that your physical fitness can get you so far, but if your mental game is weak or you're not able to make good decisions in a critical moment, then your fitness will be for nothing. So you need both of these components, and that's something that I think is rarely focused on. And I think it's something where particularly female athletes have shown that you can really get the competitive edge if you're able to harness these characteristics and really get the most out of them. What do I mean by characteristics? Quick dictionary definition. They are defining or noticeable qualities that belong to an individual. So they're things, they're personality traits, they're aspects of a person that are particularly noticeable or particularly special. And what you'll notice here is that nowhere in that definition does it say that they're things that we're born with. These aren't innate qualities. These are things that can be trained and developed. And they're things that we can train, develop, and work on all the time. So we devote a certain amount of time each day or over the week to physical training, but there's a heck of a lot of hours in the day and in the week where we're not doing physical training, where we can also work on the characteristics that make us better extreme triathletes. And that's away from the training that we do to get our bodies stronger. This is the training that we make sure we can do so that when we're there on race day, we can get the most out of the strength we have in our bodies. So I want to talk about 6 characteristics that I think are particularly important for success in extreme triathlon. And the first one that I would mention is realistic planning. One could even say somewhat pessimistic planning. If you're going to take on an extreme triathlon or Norseman, then obviously you're going to spend a fair amount of time planning your race. You have to coordinate with your crew. This isn't an Ironman where the aid stations are all there for you. You have to have a plan of how your day is going to go. And you can plan to have an absolutely perfect day, but what you might also realize is important is planning to have a day where not everything goes right. What are you going to do? What decisions can you make now that will ensure that when you're on the course and you feel sick, or you get a flat tire, or you miss your crew, or you miss catching your bottles, that will ensure that you can still have a great race and that won't derail your entire day? These are things that we can think about now. We can imagine not just the best case scenario where we have a wonderful race, but also the worst case scenario and how we'll manage it and how we'll deal with that if these things should crop up on race day. Then we've made our plan. Now we have to make sure that if these things do happen to come about in the race, we can stay calm when they're happening. So that's things that we've expected and anticipated might go wrong, and we're calm enough to deal with them. Maybe we've practiced changing a flat tire under pressure. I like to do 10 push-ups before practicing changing a flat tire, so I get that adrenaline feeling. But it's also staying calm in the face of things that we didn't predict at all, but we realize, okay, this might not be the perfect day I expected, but there's still a way for me to keep on moving forward on the course and get a good race out of this. I just have to not overreact, stay calm, and make the decisions that will help me move forward in the best way possible. And these are things that we can practice every day because we're always going to be faced with challenges and unexpected scenarios that come up, and we can work on our strategy for staying as calm as possible when they do happen. Then, attention to detail under pressure. What I mean by that is we've talked about what might happen if things go badly and how we should react then. But what if you're having a great day? You feel amazing on the bike, you're really in the flow, everything feels incredible, and you feel so good that you forgot to eat or drink anything for the last 2 hours. You can't make these mistakes if you want to be having a good day 6 hours down the line. You need the attention to detail, even when you're in the race setting and it's really going well, or you're in a competitive scenario, or you're just about to make or not make a particular cutoff time that you want to. You have to focus on the little things that will give you the big benefit. I can't tell you how often I've been going along slowly on the bike, eating a sandwich and feeling very unprofessional, and people are flying by me on either side. But then I do see those people again on the marathon, and I see them because they're walking and I'm running. So making those good decisions under pressure is also critical. And that's something that you can practice in any training session. You can have your watch beeping every 15 minutes to make sure that you're fueling at the right time. And all these details are things that you can plan in advance and make sure that you execute well on race day. Then, if things are going well and you're feeling quite good, you can consider your pacing and your racing capabilities on the day. Patient pacing in extreme triathlon has to be the name of the game. There is no one who's making a difference in an extreme triathlon by their first 400 meters on the swim or the way they bike on the first hill. Everything you are doing is just leading up to you having as solid a performance as possible on the last hill or the last descent, or usually the last section of the run. That's where you can make the difference in placing or between having a good race or a terrible day. You need to have the patience to know how hard you can push, that you can sustain for 6, 7, 8, 10 more hours. And this is something where I would strongly recommend not just relying on gadgets, on watts, on times, but knowing your body feeling and your body telling you how hard you're pushing and how much you can keep going. And this is something else that you can easily build into your training. And you can make sure that you're not just dependent on a heart rate monitor or a gadget for all your training sessions, but you can start to get a feel of what's the effort that I can really sustain so that I'm not shuffling or crawling the last section of this race. I'm getting the absolute most out of my fitness and everything that I put into this race and everything I prepared for. Then second to last important characteristic, the ability to just get on with it. An extreme triathlon is a long day. We've seen that things can go wrong. We can lose concentration. We can have bad moments. We can just not feel ideal. But it's about, at the end of the day, rising above ourselves and finishing what we started. And there's always going to be a struggling phase or several phases. But if we can have the mentality to just keep on moving forwards, no matter how fast that is, no matter if certain things haven't gone to plan, but we can just keep on ticking over, then we're going to get the absolute most out of what we have on the day. And that won't always necessarily be everything we trained for whatever reason, but we can always get the most out of what we happen to have at the current moment. And I think a mentality of I'll just get on with this. And even if that didn't go to plan and I might not get the placing I want, I'm still going to keep going and I'm not just going to throw in the towel, is an absolutely essential trait in an extreme triathlon. This is not an all or nothing thing. This is a grind till the end. And if you have the mentality, which you can cultivate during training to get there, then you will get the reward of being an XTRI finisher. My coach likes to tell a story about an Olympic triathlete who was repeatedly kicked out of the Australian national training squad because whenever she went through all the physical and physiological testing that she did, she had very poor scores. And she ended up being one of Australia's best triathletes. And he said, well, yeah, it doesn't matter what all the physiological tests said because you can't measure courage. And I always remember that and I always think about that. And it's absolutely true. This is not a quality that you're going to find good advice about how to promote on training peaks or anything like that. This is something that you can work on in yourself every day, whatever it means for you and whatever challenges you might have leading up to an extreme triathlon. This is always something that you can work on and focus on. And I think if you have the patience to do that and accept where your training is, where your body is, then you'll realize that you have a huge amount of potential for taking on the massive challenge, but the beautiful challenge that is an extreme triathlon. So those would be my 6 key characteristics that I think anyone can work on and develop to become a better extreme triathlete. Don't overlook them. Don't think that they're not important. These are essential traits, and these are the things that will support your physical training. And I think that in line with the theme of this evening's seminar, these are all traits where women have absolutely no disadvantage, maybe even some natural advantages every now and then. And they're things that all athletes can cultivate to really get the most out of their experience as extreme triathletes. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
I have a question for you. You are the winner of Swissman and Patagonman in 2019, and then also you had the second place at Norseman. Did you always manage to stick to the plan? Because you were talking about the plan with the 6 points that you had inside your plan. Was always a perfect plan? Work always the best way for you?
No. So I definitely managed to stick to those important points that I listed. But my crew will definitely tell you that I give them this piece of paper with everything that I say I want at each aid stop, you know, like I want to eat this, I want to drink this. And then and they're like, oh, Flora's given us the piece of paper, now we can throw it away, because I'll turn up and just ask for something different. So I definitely do kind of change my mind a little bit about what I want, what I need. And we've also kind of made planning mistakes. Like I remember sort of telling my 19 Swissman, like, oh, the last section is just really easy. It's just a bit of a walk up this hill. And so they were like, oh, okay. And I turned up like raring to go. Someone was really close behind me and I was, you know, been drinking all these energy drinks all day. And I just went so fast and they had these huge rucksacks and were wearing like winter coats and everything. And I hadn't prepared them properly at all for how fast we might have to go. And so we kind of had this emergency situation of like, oh, I don't know if they can stay with me. What are we going to do? But we kind of managed to find a way to overcome it. And so I think I've definitely made a lot of planning mistakes in my time, but I have managed to make the best of it and stay calm when they happened. So yeah.
Mette has a question for you. What is your strongest skill in training and in racing?
Wow. In training, I think in training, it would definitely be not getting too discouraged if the session starts badly, or even if it goes on badly. Like, I think we all have those days where it's just not working, and pushing on and telling yourself like, yeah, maybe the body will get going in the next half hour, in the next hour, like tricking yourself a little bit, that I can work well. And I think I can do that well. And I think I can also tell myself that I got something out of the session, even if it didn't turn out exactly as I wanted to. And I think that goes back to body feel and trusting that the process is working, even if you don't feel amazing. And then in racing, I'd say it would be that I don't get too nervous during a race. I think, yeah, feeling calm when the racing is happening. And I think a lot of athletes can relate to that there's this incredible nervousness in the days and hours before everything starts. And as soon as it starts, you just have this feeling of I'm in control now. And I think that's something that has helped me a lot, kind of when the racing is difficult.
Regarding the nerves, we have a question from Noemi Barrientos. She's asking you how do you manage the nerves of the previous days and the fear and all these psychological aspects?
I think that's an amazing question, and it's a great question to be asking now, because when you figure out your strategies now, you can be so prepared for when it actually happens. So you can think about and plan things now to make sure that your pre-race feeling is better. So for me, that partly means just kind of having fun with my crew, like not taking anything too seriously. We just sort of enjoy the time together in whatever place we are. And I just try and kind of, relax as much as possible with them. So that does mean all the kind of organizational stuff of like preparing your food and your gear. If you can do that the day before, really have that nice relaxed day, something I still have to work on. And I'd say on maybe race morning, of course it's tricky. And I think if you weren't nervous, you'd be doing something wrong. What I've had recommended to me, and I think works very well, is just try and remember all the sources of strength and confidence that you have that got you to where you are. All the training sessions, all the people, all the situations that you worked through that were tough. And if you can remember that your confidence and your strength comes from so many different places, not just one, then that's something that I feel can give you a good sense of calm in the moment.
We have another question from Ila Pearson. She's asking you, what drives you to do all these extreme triathlons? Craziness, maybe?
Good question. I think just as soon as I saw what extreme triathlon was, I had this immediate gut feeling of, that's insane, I have to do that. And it was really kind of that simple. I think it's the fact of how challenging it is, that it's a racing format that you really have to do everything yourself. It's not maybe like in certain other races where obviously there's like a load of bikes on the course, so maybe drafting is more of an issue. In extreme triathlon, everything you do yourself. And I think it's maybe just when you do one and you realize that it goes well or you enjoyed it, then you really want to see how far you can get and what's possible. And my first extreme triathlon, I really didn't do that well, but that motivated me a lot to understand how I could improve and how I could get better. And because I really loved the format, because it was so positive, the atmosphere, and such a special experience being on that race course, it really motivated me to do more and more.
And Caroline is asking you, how do you enable that feeling of calm? What is your secret to finding strength in chaos?
That's a good way, because I almost feel like the more chaotic it is,
the more you like
it, the more I just think it's sort of funny. Like if everything goes really wild, like the worse the conditions are and everything is, and I'm just like, this is so ridiculous. Might as well get on with it. If everything's kind of perfect and smooth, and I find that trickier because you have nothing to distract you. But if you're more concerned about actually surviving than racing, then it's quite easy. But I'd say finding calm in a normal pre-race situation, definitely, as I said, thinking about your sources of confidence and all the things that you've done over however long it's been that brought you to this point. And honestly, preparing months in advance, knowing that you're going to have that nervous moment, and have your mantra, have your saying written on your armband or whatever it is, because you know that moment is coming and you can get as ready for it now as possible. And I think anything that you can really focus on will calm you. And that would probably be my best advice.
Louise Mitchen is asking you, well, actually, she's saying that she loves that you eat sandwiches. What do you have in them?
Oh, I have the worst racing diet, really. I eat sandwiches and Snickers and Coke and iced tea and all that stuff. And my friends always comment on it because they're like, I've never met anyone else who can just full on eat food while running, but I can. In my sandwiches, I have either like turkey and kind of processed turkey, which is not that great, but I digest it really well, or Nutella. I never really had peanut butter, but might try that as well. But yeah, usually I try and have the savory ones first early in the day, and then later the Nutella, and then the Snickers.
Well, Louise is saying that she has Snickers as well. So,
right.
Well, we have a question from Karen Pantin, and he's saying, do you enjoy extreme more than regular Ironman? Do you think you need to participate in an Ironman before an extreme triathlon?
Yes and no. I don't never say never, but I don't think I will do any more normal Ironmans. It's just not for me. It doesn't attract me. For me, extreme is almost a discipline on its own. I just love it so much more. It's just my passion. And I definitely don't think you need to do a normal Ironman first. The first long distance I ever did was Swissman. And that was fine. And for me, it was just incredible experience, so much more special and unique. I think it's maybe even almost better than it's tougher in some ways, but when you're going for an Ironman, it's just this, like, everything takes so long because there's so many athletes and this and that, and it's much more intimate when it's an extreme triathlon. And I think it teaches you a lot more about yourself as well, and it's something you can share with your crew. So yeah, for me, it's 100% extreme triathlon.
Lingo is asking you, do you think you can commit to XTRI when you have a full-time work and other responsibilities?
Yes. So I work 4 days a week, and it works. I think that especially you don't need, well, Caroline will be able to give much more detail about this, but I don't necessarily think you need huge volume training to do well. I think you can do very well and avoid burnout with short, intense sessions that can fit quite well into a working day. And I think that, yeah, when you're doing an extreme triathlon, it's not coming down to pure speed. It's coming down to, yes, the challenges of an Ironman distance, but also your ability to combine all these complicated challenges, which is something that a working person who's combining life with training is absolutely going to be great at. And I always tell people that, yeah, it's fine to be working when you're an extreme triathlete, because every day I get up really early to swim, then I have a working day, then I have to run. So like an extreme triathlon is just like that. So you're probably well prepared if you have a job.
Judita is asking you, do you think you have to live in a similar environment or landscape to race to be competitive?
No. I live in Switzerland. I don't live near any mountains. And I'll always remember the Patagonman guys being like, wow, did you train in cold water and train in the mountains? You must be so ready. And I was like, no, not at all. I don't even honestly train on the Swissman course. I think there's always alternatives in training. You can build strength many ways. So I certainly don't do any kind of intense mountain pass training or anything like that. And I really don't think it has to hold you back at all.
We have a question regarding the situation that we are living right now. Actually, how are you managing trying to plan for the moving target that is COVID race cancellations or adjustment as we have? XTRI training starts so far away from the race date. And when the race date is obviously unknown, how do you prepare that? Or what is the next race that you are preparing or you are thinking to do next year or this year? Sorry, 2020.
Well, it's either going to be the Himalayan triathlon or Keltman would be the first ones. So potentially May, June. And as you say, those are still uncertain. So I think the nice thing in a way is that we've had a year to practice the whole training uncertainty thing. And I think all of us have probably discovered what helps us stay motivated and what's tricky for us. For me, it's partly telling myself that there might not even be any races, even if there weren't any races in 2021. I still want to be the best racer I can be when the races come back. So I will keep training. And partly it's, I enjoy the training. I enjoy swimming, biking, running. And I think that even if you're not totally certain about when your goal race is coming, if you enjoy the process, that's one thing. And it also gives you the opportunity to have maybe a little bit of freedom with your training, sometimes enforced, like I have to be a bit creative with my swimming at the moment. Yeah, I'd say that it's definitely a challenge, and you don't have to pretend to yourself that it's not tricky and that it's not a motivation drain, because it really can be. But I think that we get a lot out of being able to swim, bike and run. And even if races aren't back for a while, those are still things that it's worth pursuing some training to enjoy.
Tarhi Ranta Ohala would like to know if you gotten any DNF race, if you did. How did you cope with that? Because I think still disappointed about the Keltman run time cutoff that he had at Keltman.
I've never DNF'd an XTRI. I DNF, that's a cool story. I did have to DNF the Alpe d'Huez triathlon in 2019, and that was 9 days before Norseman. And that was a bit of a tricky thing, because I wanted to be super fit for Norseman, and I'm like, wow, I couldn't even finish the race I just did. In a week, I've got to do even better. I DNF'd Alpe d'Huez because it was extremely hot, and I just don't do particularly well in those conditions. I think I made some nutrition mistakes. And it was kind of interesting because I think maybe I could have pushed on, but I just made the decision, no, I want to give my best performance at Norseman, so I will just stop now. And the trickiest thing was probably just making peace with myself with the fact that a DNF isn't, this thing that defines you as an athlete or as a person, or that means that you have this incredible mental weakness. Sometimes it's just what happens. We don't race because we know the outcome. We race to find out. And it's just another opportunity after any cutoff miss or DNF to say, okay, I'm going to learn from that and move forward. And it's going to feel even better when I do get to where I was trying to go. So I have DNF'd, and it's not the end of the world, because 9 days later, I had a great race.
So now we have another question. What do you think the main difference is between someone who wins an XTRI versus someone who will finish it?
Wow. The amount of time they get to enjoy the course. I don't know, I've had that said to me when I've had bad races. I don't know if they're a main difference. I mean, there could be physical things, obviously, that are separating those people. I mean, if you're not coming into it with like elite athletic goals and maybe with a particular training background, then yeah, I think the physical might be the main separation there, because actually I think on the mental side, there's probably much more in common. No matter how fast or how slowly you might be covering that course, XTRI demands a lot of everyone just because of how tough the conditions are. And so I'd say that the difference might be the time on the watch at the end of the day, but I think we all kind of have that little bit of craziness of wanting to do something that's just that bit tougher than a normal Ironman. And you see that when you talk to all the competitors who are there, we all have that same drive and passion. And I think it's more a similarity than a difference.
Okay, so thank you so much, Flora.
Well, thank you, and thank everyone for the questions. Super interesting. And if you ever have more, you can always email or Instagram me. I'm always happy to talk.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you here, and good luck with Himalaya and Keltman, fingers crossed. And good luck for your training, and wish you all the best for 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.